I went to undergrad to study music, and I'd only been playing guitar for about a year at that point. I was a self-taught acoustic player, youth group type music, and I went off to do a music degree because I didn't really know what else I was going to do. And I loved the theory classes, but man, the guitar, they had me learning this nylon stuff, and as an 18-year-old, I just wasn't into it. And at this point, I kind of wish I'd studied harder because, man, those etudes, I'd actually be able to play prog right now if I'd actually been paying attention. But I did that music degree, and then I went off to do academics. And I went on and I actually have a PhD. I teach as an adjunct at Baylor in the classics department. I do dead Greek and Roman stuff, so mythology, medical terminology of all things. I teach Greek, I teach Latin. I've taught literature and civ and all that sort of stuff. And after taking, almost 20 years off of music, except for maybe gigging in churches or playing with some friends, I decided to really sort of get into it again and ditch my digital stuff and get a real tube amp and buy some pedals. And I was digging into it, and it was sort of overwhelming and kind of an expensive process. And I was eating lunch in the cafeteria one day, and I have this colleague in the department who actually builds his own synth gear. And he looked at me and he said, "You're smart. You can probably learn how to solder." And I looked at him and I said, "Really?" He's like, "Yes." So I went home and I started reading. And I spent several months reading. There's so much on the internet these days. If you want to learn how to do something, there's really no excuse anymore. You don't even have to go to the library. You just sit down with Google and start looking. So I spent a couple months learning the difference between resistors and capacitors and where you buy these things and different kinds of circuits. And I made some part orders and got some cheap stuff off of eBay and put together a few pedals. Some of them worked, some of them didn't. Held together with duct tape and got hooked. There's really something wonderful about sitting down and putting something together. I don't know if any of you remember being a kid and enjoying putting like plastic models together, or if you had Legos and just that whole process. And pedal building in some ways is like Legos for adults. You can go buy a kit, and I'm probably probably super strange as a pedal builder because I've honestly never built a kit. I didn't do any pedal mods until I was already selling pedals, so it's a little weird. But you get these things and you get all these parts and you follow the directions and you put them together. And when you're done, you have this thing that's more than just the sum of the parts. These little pieces go together, and when you're done, it's like Legos, and you go from bricks to having, I don't know if you remember when Technic was a thing. You had these working sort of contraptions. And guitar pedals are like that on steroids, because you put these things together, and if you do it right and you step on it the first time and it lights up and you strum your guitar, oh my God, you feel like a rock god. And I made that, I put that together, and it's the coolest thing ever. And then when you go from doing that to realizing that not only did you put something together and you had a lot of fun doing it and it feels good to use it, but that your friends think it's awesome and they're willing to give you money for these things, and you realize I can fund my hobby. And then you start to be thinking, this can be more than a hobby. This can be sort of a lifestyle. I work as an adjunct, and so employment's kind of unpredictable. And this side hobby turning into side gig, and hopefully, as orders are increasing, becoming a more and more sort of steady bit of income. It's just the coolest thing to realize I can learn how to do that. And then to do it, and then have other people validate you when you're doing this. I mean, to have somebody who plays music professionally sit down, plug into one of your boxes, step on that pedal, and when they tear into it, the look on their face when they like how they sound, it's one of the most fulfilling things ever. I enjoy the putting together. I enjoy the design process. I enjoy, believe it or not, the having to constantly learn new stuff. Adobe Illustrator, okay. KiCad, PCB software, okay. There's always something new to learn. But that moment when an actual artist sits down, plugs into your pedal, and they don't really care that you're there anymore because it's just them and the noise coming out of the amp. There's something really, really cool about that. Seeing people go on to make music and being able to stream songs on Spotify, that you had a part in helping make that to happen. It's the coolest thing ever. Now, I'm still not a great guitar player, but I get to be part of this sort of creative process where other people are making amazing stuff and hopefully creating amazing moments with their audiences as well. So my pedals, I don't know how unique they are. There's a million of us building pedals, right? And there's this saying in the humanities that we use to caution people who think they're all that. We say, if we see so far today, it's because we stand on the shoulders of giants. Very rarely does anyone come along and invent the clone and do something entirely new. But you work with what has come before, and you find ways to take that and to bring it up to date, to update it in a way that is more useful for today. So part of my philosophy here is not just that they look good and that they're durable enough to use on a tour, but that these are tools. Musicians have needs. Working musicians have needs. They need their pedals to be reliable, they need to sound good, and beyond that, they need the pedal to be able to do the things they need it to do. A lot of pedals, the buying and selling on the used market is insane because a lot of pedals are sort of one-trick ponies. And if they are doing the thing that you need them to do, all is fine and well until your band falls apart and you go get in another band, and all of a sudden you've got a problem because you've got to sell all your rig and buy a whole new rig because you were playing blues but now you're doing country. Or you were doing that and now you're doing metal. And so you've got to toss all your old gear and get new gear. And so a lot of guys right now are making this decision to just forgo the whole thing and go digital. Buy one unit to rule them all, right? You can use it in the studio, you can use it live, you can go shreddy with it, you can go play your spanky country stuff with it. And you gotta give them a good reason to buy the stuff they want. Because those guys don't actually want a digital unit. They want colorful pedals, they wanna collect gear, they wanna be getting new stuff. You gotta give them a good reason. The reason I give them is that these pedals have flexibility. There are switches and controls on these pedals that I add on that allow you to tailor it to fit your rig. You're playing a Telecaster. Okay, so you probably need something to thicken it up a little bit, give it a little bit more spank. Well, my DRAC you can boost your low end a little bit. But what happens the next night you're playing a rock gig and you're playing a Les Paul? Well, you plug into the same pedal and you pull the bottom out and you use it like a treble booster. You go from that gig and you want to boost your metal head and play some shreddy stuff. Well, you can crank the gain all the way up, you can throw some clipping diodes in there, and now you've got a proper overdrive. So these are intended to be tools where you don't have to have all of my dirt. But one pedal can hit multiple genres. Playing outside, playing in the club, different sorts of contexts, you need to be able to shape your tone to fit the new acoustic context. Pedals don't often give you the kind of control that you need to make that work. And it's frustrating. You get rid of that pedal and go get a different pedal. Maybe that'll do what I need it to do. I like to build as much of that in as possible so that whatever your needs are as a musician, you're going to be able to find a sound that's going to work for you right then, right there. I mean, who knows? Maybe you're not even bringing your amp to the gig and you're going to play a house amp. You've got to be able to deal with the different kinds of headroom and different kinds of amps. I mean, the Vox over here and the PV, these are low headroom amps. Your pedal needs to be cleaner and push into it. An amp like a Fender's got really high headroom. You're gonna have to rely on the pedal to produce the saturation levels you need if you're gonna get some crunch. I build that into my pedals so that you can quickly make some adjustments and fit it to the guitar you're playing, the amp you're playing, the kind of genre you're playing. And one pedal won't do everything, so it's an excuse for me to play with new circuits and find new ways to interact with it. So this is all dirt. This is all analog, all through-hole components, dirt. Do they all sound different? Yes. But more importantly, they don't just offer you different tones, they offer you different ways of shaping the tone. Some of these pedals approach it by focusing on what's going on the low end of the spectrum. Other pedals are more mids focused and allow you to scoop or boost. Other pedals, they're a more traditional tone knob where you're cutting the top or not. Depending on the kind of musical context you're in, you not only need a particular kind of tone, but you need a way to shape it to fit what your needs are. And so not only are we generating sound, I mean, there's only so many ways op amps can generate drive. I'll throw in 6 different compression options on the clipping diodes. You want the asymmetric of the Boss overdrive? You got it. You want more of a tube scream or even one? You got it. You want something heavy and asymmetric? You got it, right? But then there's the additional thing that, say this one here, this has a clean boost inside of it. So you can blend it in. Go a little more chimey, a little more fuzzy. These other ones don't have the clean boost. This one has that. You want to go for that jangly 90s thing? This is the one that's going to do it for you. Although I've got a buddy who plays some really mean blues with a version of this. This muff style circuit here, you would not believe how many different ways you can take that circuit and change just a few values and completely change the character. You change the values of in the tone stack, completely different pedal. And I could sell you 2 different pedals. Or I can put those different values on one switch. So you can go from classic grunge and get that early 90s sound, or you can push it up, turn the gain all the way up, roll your guitar volume down, and do a nice warm blues sound. I recently just had a well-known musical personality who's known for playing country music actually shredding with this pedal. It's the coolest thing ever to see a pedal that you designed one way end up being used in a completely different genre because you baked in options that allow them to sort of dial it in where they want it to go. So just a quick sort of rundown over the unique sort of features of these, I guess. This is a traditional vintage fuzz along the lines of a fuzz face, but I give you 3 different input capacitor selections. So depending upon how much low end you want and how mushy you want your fuzz, you can match that to your instrument. And then you got an external bias knob that'll take you all the way from almost a bit crusher sound up to Velcro into traditional fuzz face, and you can even oversaturate it so it gets a little crispy. This one here, this more muff thing, you've got 3 different clipping textures. So you can do symmetric, traditional, you can do asymmetric, or you can pull most of the compression out and it's just raw testosterone in a box. And then you've got boostable mids. You know, the problem with muffs is that they sound amazing in your bedroom, but as soon as you start playing with a band live, you're gone, you're lost. So you can put it this way in the bedroom, and then when you go live, kick the switch and you stay visible in the mix. This is a transistor-based boost that allows you to put clippers in and out, so you can use it as a sparkling clean boost for your country gig, but you can also put those in and make it an overdrive. And I've got the transistor inside tuned so that when you move the gain knob past about 9 up to 10, it actually starts to gate out and it turns into a fuzz. This red one has a blue one inside of it. You can pull the back off and actually set the blue one. So you can use this as a DRAC horn boost, or you can kick this and it turns on the second one inside. And if you gate it all the way out, you get a mean fuzz. One pedal, sparkling clean boost for your spanky country stuff. Mean, nasty fuzz. One box. This is an op amp based boost with a different high pass filter option on the input, as well as clipping textures. So you can go from clean all the way up to, honestly, this one will get you into hair metal if your amp is a little bit dirty and it's pushing it. This one here is like an amp in a box. It's got a very special switch on it that's actually on these other ones, well, some of these as well. This mode switch takes the clipping diodes and you can put them out of the circuit entirely and just get the raw op amp clipping, which isn't actually commercially available in many ways. But you can also put them in for a traditional overdrive, soft clipping, or kick the switch over and it becomes a distortion box because the soft clipping becomes hard clipping. One box, completely different sort of ways of shaping the tone. And the other one gives you 3 different clipping diode options. So depending upon the amp you're playing with, different level of crunch. This one's a little bit more mid heavy, as many people want their overdrives to go, but you've got your 6 different clipping options. You've got hard clipping, you've got soft clipping, and you have a frequency adjuster that lets you move that focus from the 720 Hertz region up to the 1K region. If it's sounding a little too honky in your particular context, just flick the switch and it opens it up. This one here, this is probably my favorite one. You're going to have to hear Daniel play this one. I don't want to talk about this pedal, I just want you to hear this pedal. This is my favorite pedal, but it's got 6 different clipping options. It's got the hard clipping, the soft clipping, and it has a built-in preamp for when you want to use it for lead work. This one I already mentioned has the clean boost. The clean boost actually has controls on the inside that you can open up the back and set your clean boost. Where's the tone level? So if you're a bass player, you can match it to the unity gain on the EQ that you need for your fundamental. And then when you close it back up, you've got the ability to blend your fundamental in with some really great drive, almost to fuzz stuff here. This switch gives you switchable high pass filters, 3 of them, and the other switch sets the tone knob, 3 different parametric points, depending upon which mid frequencies you want to address with the tone knob. I know it's a lot of geek talk about all the different controls, but the idea is that one of these pedals, you can find a sound in it. Doesn't matter your genre, your gear setup, you're gonna be able to dial it in to do what you need it to do. And this is another muff style thing. It's got 3 different scoops to the mids. It's got a boost. The boost has its own gain control. And muffs, just a moment of geek talk here. Muffs have 4 gain stages. 2 of those gain stages have clipping diodes in them. This one here lets you change the diodes on the last clipping stage. This one here lets you change the diodes out on both of them. So you can set one of them to be a little asymmetric and the other one heavy, or just mix and match to dial it up however you want. You have 6 options in each of those stages to shape it. You've got a pre-gain, which is kind of the equivalent of pulling your guitar volume down a little back, except you don't have to remember where it goes on your guitar. You can just preset it on your pedal. You've got a high pass filter on this where you can choose where your low frequency is on the input to the circuit, which means that you can crank it where you want as a bass player, or if you're a guitar player, you can roll that back and make it real clean and cutting. The idea to my pedals is that without overwhelming the user, there are controls on there that are going to let you shape your tone the way you're accustomed to being able to with a digital unit. We got to get guitar players back to this kind of gear. And the only way that works is if you empower guitar players to use this gear the way they can use the digital stuff. All that tweak, all those options, all that ability to go from one context to the next without having to completely change your gear. That's the idea behind these pedals. I recently went live on the web, phdpedals.com. You can buy my pedals there. You can come by in person and get them more affordably, but you have to play them for me if you want to get that sort of a deal. And I usually have a sale going on as well on one pedal or another, so you'll want to check back on that. What else? I'm on Instagram and I'm on Facebook if you want to follow there and see pictures of shinies and new things as they're coming out. And I'm always up for a challenge. If there's a sort of approach to shaping tone and dirt that you'd be curious to see me make a stab at and see what I can do and what sort of options that can go on there, I'd be happy to hear and happy to take a look at what's out there circuit-wise and how could this be improved from the perspective of a user. Not just how it sounds. I mean, it's got to sound great, but it has to make sense to you as a tool. It needs to do what you need it to do, and it needs to have the flexibility so that you can tune it to your style, your rig, your gear. Thanks so much to the Texas Tone Wizards and the Texas Music Cafe for having me today. Ladies and gentlemen, Daniel Lightfoot of American Merit is here to make my pedals sound amazing today. And just so you know, there's no magic, well, aside from the pedal magic going on. We're using a working man's Fender Hot Rod Deluxe, set to the clean channel. Give the lovely audience. Absolutely no dirt in the amp. Yes? No. So our first trick, let's see. Let's go back to the ear shaker. Okay. I'm going to turn this on and Daniel's going to give us some crunch. So this pedal will go from clean boost all the way up to hard rock. It's got 6 different compression settings on the diodes. It will go into hard or soft clipping. You've got cuts on both the treble and the bass. It's got more gain than you can shake a stick at, and it's got a preamp. Let me turn this on again without the preamp so they can hear what it does. Preamp off. So that's probably my favorite pedal, but my customers, their favorite pedal is probably this DRAC on here. This is designed to sort of be a working man Swiss Army knife. So I'm going to turn it on. It's going to be in a clean boost mode. I'm going to show you how we can control the bottom end of the pedal, and then I'm going to gradually add dirt, throw some clipping diodes, and push it probably even a little bit into fuzz territory.
Yeah, I'm going to coil split for this one.
Going to coil split. All right. Give us a clean tone. So depending on the kind of gig or genre you're playing, you can go from your spanky clean country boosts all the way up into fuzz. And I know this one producer guy that drives that into an already dirty amp, and it's just lo-fi deliciousness. So this red one's kind of cool because it's actually 2 of these put into the same pedal box. You have to pull the back off to get at the controls for the other one. But I've also tweaked the transistor so it gates out a bit sooner. And then when you slam it with the other one, you get some pretty legitimate fuzz. So I'm going to turn this one on. We're going to clean boost. I'll get it dirty, and then we'll slam it into fuzz zone. Moving on into fuzz, right? Let's go into the isosceles. This is based on a muff, but it's got a couple interesting switches on there. We can start with a pretty standard sort of 90s grunge sound like this. All the way over into blues, just by switching mid switches around and clipping diodes and stuff. The Storm God over here is more of a fuzz face. It's got switchable input caps so you can control your high pass filter, especially depending on the guitar you're playing and how thick you want that fuzz. And another thing I'm going to be moving here is this is an external bias control. I'm going to set it more in a stock position. I'm going to move this around so you can hear what it does to the texture of the fuzz. We're going to start sort of in max fuzz territory on the input caps, and we'll thin it out, right? All right. I think this is your favorite, right? The HyperDrive?
Yeah, it's a Marshall in a box.
Okay, so this one here has the ability to go from a clean, nice, just big, fat, clean pedal, and then we can kick it into either a soft clipping overdrive formation or a hard clipping distortion formation. And in each of those settings, there's 3 different compression settings for the diodes. So I'm gonna start it clean, and then we will move up to Shred God territory, yeah? Like an amp, you want to go from clean all the way up to nasty dirty.
Yeah.
All right, the polyphemus is pretty new. It's kind of smooth like butter.
Yeah.
For lead work, it's got a frequency sort of adjust to move you from the 720 emphasis up to a 1K. It's also got that hard, soft clipping selection, and here it has a 6-way rotary for different sorts of diode combinations. It's got a control to affect how much of the bottom end is getting processed by the gain loop, and then there's a treble cut as well. All right, so we got this set up pretty hot. I'm gonna start it pretty hot. Maybe we'll back it off and we'll try some other settings, but let's go for this. I didn't talk about the alien whine, which is a new boost, but I'm going to turn this one off. We're going to do this one, and then we'll stack these two. Because while the DRAC-on's really good for hitting your amp real hard, making your tubes break up, the alien whine is intended to go into something that's already dirty. It'll stand on its own and do a lot of the kinds of things that the DRAC-on does. This is a transistor-based boost. This is an op-amp-based one, but this one is a little more focused in the sense that it wants to hit something already dirty. So we're going to do this one, and then we'll turn the polyphemus on and hit it with this. tightens up. Can you use some rhythm work for us? Some like metal rhythm, and we'll hit it with that. Add just that little extra bit of tightness and spank to it, yeah? All right, next up is the orovirus. This one's a rather different sort of approach. The dirt is much less well behaved on its own. It's kind of mushy, but when you add a boosted clean blend to this, it doesn't matter because you're getting all that texture of the dirt and then you're getting the chimey clarity of a clean blend in here. No, this is not a clon. It's not even remotely related to a clon. And if you're a bass player, this is probably something you want to consider because this clean blend here, that can run your fundamental through so that you can just add dirt to your tone instead of replacing it. And so to make this work well for both guitars and bass, there are actually controls inside that if you take the back off, you can set this clean boost. Where's your high pass filter set at? So how much of your low frequencies are going through. If you're a bass player, you're gonna wanna drop that way down. If you're a guitar player, you probably wanna pull it out so it's not interfering with the dirt. And then overall volume and gain of the clean itself. I've got it set to a pretty moderate level here, but we'll definitely be able to hear as I tilt that blend as it goes from the clean over to the dirt, and then we can sort of tune it to where we want it. It's good for bass. I've got a friend who plays pretty serious blues tones with this, but I've also had people that play in the church praise and worship genre say that this adds that chime that they're looking for. It's also got 3 different mid settings for that tone knob, depending on how you want to bring it. In the top position where I have it, it's pretty mids focused. So the tone knob is actually kind of increasing your mids, whereas when you put it in the other sections, it gets brighter and the tone knob is more for dropping treble out, depending on the kind of approach you've got going on. Additionally, that's part of the flexibility for using it on something like a bass, because your EQ spread is completely different than what guitars are going after. Speaking of bass, this is a pedal, I came up with a circuit for guitar for a friend of mine, but it's monster on bass, and the bass player in American Merit uses this pedal. And it just adds delicious dirt to whatever's going on. Part of what makes it bass friendly is there is a high pass filter on this pedal. It's muff based, but in addition to the traditional ability to sort of move your mids and treble around, you can shape how much of your low end is going through. So if you're a bass player, you can actually tune that so when you turn the pedal on, it doesn't completely destroy your EQ shape down in the bottom end of the spectrum. You don't want to all of a sudden have all these squashy 80 hertz going out when you don't want them, right? It's got a switchable boost. The boost has its own independent gain control. We got 3 different positions for the tone knob, hitting different parametric mids. It's also got a pre-gain. So if you're in the habit of rolling your guitar volume back when you run a lot of fuzz in order to get the gain and the sustain, but to bring it back with that kind of sensitivity, you can actually preset the max on here, kind of roll it off ahead of time so that you don't have to find number 6 on your guitar volume if you don't have that kind of discipline. And what else? There was one other control. Yes, on the bottom, switchable diodes. So stages 2 and 3 in a muff have clipping diode pairs. This gives you 6 different settings in each one. They're pretty interactive. If you pull all the diodes out in stage 3, you're not going to hear a whole lot of difference in stage 2. But when you start compressing in 3, it's kind of interesting how all of a sudden 2 becomes interactive with it. So I'll move these around a little bit so you can hear them, what the different compression settings sound like. And it's actually really useful with a bass because basses clip out in completely different ways and completely different frequencies. And it lets you sort of tune the pedal to your rig. What do you need it to do? How much dirt do you want? What kind of EQ field are you working with? All right, this one might get a little bit loud. That's a muff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any combination you want to stack just to sort of show off the tones that you found using these?
My go-to for lead, I run the HyperDrive with the DRAC on boosted for like solo stuff. Yeah, pretty.
How do you want to stack?
Nasty as you want it to get.
Yeah, and just to remind you, nice Fender amp. Thanks so much to the Texas Tone Wizards and to the Texas Music Cafe for having us today.